Greek mythology has always been full of all kinds of mockery and teasing of human civilization. And that's exactly how human civilization is constructed today. Simone Beauvoir's famous aphorism, "One is not born, but rather becomes woman," reveals that human beings are shaped by a combination of natural and social attributes. The human gender is not only born, but is also constantly domesticated in a social context. When Uranus was castrated and his phallus transformed into a sex goddess, what did this earliest gender transition event in ancient times portend? Follow me and subscribe to my channel. Join us as we explore the world's first gender transition in our no-wills ideas and myths. Uranus, the god of the sky, came to the ground every night to encompass the earth and have endless sex with Gaia, the god of the earth. Gaia was disgusted by Uranus' vigorous and unending lovemaking and encouraged her children to castrate their father. Patricide and usurpation are, after all, high-risk, high-reward endeavors. The elder children took the risk more seriously. Of the 6 sons, only the youngest, the Titan god Cronus, viewed the rewards of rebellion more favorably, and was determined to put up a fight to win supreme authority in the divine realm. Gaia made a scythe out of a gray flint and gave it to Cronus. When Uranus came to make love to Gaia, Cronus, with the help of his mother, cut off Uranus' genitals with the scythe and threw them into the sea. Uranus ran back to heaven, and from then on Uranus never returned to Earth. So heaven and Earth were separated forever. Uranus' castrated genitals fell into the sea, and a lot of white, pearl-like foam rose up around his male organ. From the foam of the sea a huge shell was born. The shell was washed up by the waves in Paphos, Cyprus. Aphrodite, the goddess of desire, sex, fertility, prosperity, and victory, came out of the huge shell, white as the dawn, and she walked barefooted along the beach, with beautiful flowers blooming where she stepped. Hori, the goddess of the order of time, was already waiting there, and she crowned Aphrodite with a glittering crown of gold, dressed her in a gaudy costume, and tied a golden girdle around her, which made Aphrodite even more beautiful. Then Aphrodite left in a colorful chariot drawn by a pair of doves and flew to Olympus. It is important to be clear here that Aphrodite stands for sex. The words aphrodisia and aphrodisiac are both derived from her name. Her Roman name was Venus, and the Roman word venereal means erotic, sexual, and sexually transmitted. A sexually transmitted infection, STI, also referred to as a sexually transmitted disease, STD, and the older term venereal disease, VD. Aphrodite's son Eros represented love. His Roman name was Cupid, meaning desire. According to the records in the Phylogeny, he was the first primordial god, the fourth to appear after Chaos, Gaia, and Tartarus. He later became the son of Aphrodite and the god of war Ares. Whoever Cupid shoots the arrow from his hand has love, for love hurts. It is the sweetness that pain breeds, or pain that hurts even more. Aphrodite is only beautiful, for sex is only pleasure, or at best the loss of desire without enduring pain. Modern people prefer one-night stands to lasting love because everyone is so busy that they don't allow time for the sweetness of pain to brew. After all, sex is too convenient. Marriage is too complicated. The richer the life, the more difficult the love. Cronus became the new king of the gods, and in order to consolidate his hegemony, he imprisoned his siblings in hell who could challenge him. Cronus married his sister Rhea, the goddess of time, giving birth to the gods of Olympus. Cronus' intercourse with Aphrodite gave birth to Paphos, a metaphor here for the worship and fear of the father's phallus. According to Freud's theory, at the age of 3 to 5, boys enter a phase of male genital worship, the beginning of fear of the father as an authority, from which castration anxiety develops. This is because the sexual organs are believed to be the source of conflict between the boy and his father. This anxiety also generates the urge for sexual desire for the mother as a substitute for sexual gratification. Unlike boys, a girl begins life with motherhood as a strong temptation. This temptation begins to diminish when she realizes that she has no male genitalia. The girl believes that her mother has intentionally deprived her of her male organ. Thus, rejection of her mother is accompanied by an attachment to her father, who she sees as having a vital organ that she wishes to share. The girl develops male organ envy. According to Freud, the girl lives in an emotional ambivalence of affirmation and denial of her father, which results in her sexual ambivalence. Cronus' conspiracy with his mother to castrate his father. In his intercourse with Aphrodite, the embodiment of his father's phallus, have a variety of psychological metaphors in the recurring episodes of patricide in Greek mythology, as well as Oedipus' killing of his father and marrying his mother, are but a continual enactment of this human psychology. Simone Beauvoir was a writer, existentialist philosopher, and political activist of French origin, feminist, socialist, and social theorist. Her ideas and doctrines, among others, have had a major impact on both feminist-style existentialism and feminist theory. Beauvoir's husband was Sartre, the French philosopher, playwright, novelist, screenwriter, political activist, biographer, and literary critic. Sartre was a key figure of existentialist and phenomenological philosophy, and one of the leading figures of 20th-century French philosophy and Marxism. His ideas and doctrines, among others, influenced sociology, critical theory, post-colonial theory, and literary studies. Simone de Beauvoir and Jean-Paul Sartre, famous for maintaining lifelong open relationships, did as much as they pleased in the practice of sex as did the Sumerian god Enki and the Greek gods, but were tolerant and appreciative in their treatment of each other's beloved partners, at least according to their own pronouncements, which were free from the kind of jealousy of the Greek gods. Simone de Beauvoir's most famous motto is, "One is not born, but rather becomes woman." Her most important contribution to the world is the formulation and study of the unanswerable proposition of existence, how human beings can be born into a world they did not choose and find meaning in the absurdity of a world they do not want to live in. Is this not the question that ancient mankind has been trying to answer in its myths? Simone de Beauvoir wrote in her legendary book The Second Sex that
Freud brought out a fact whose importance had not previously been recognized. Male eroticism is definitively centered on the male organ, while the woman has two distinct erotic systems, one that is clitoral and develops in infancy and another that is vaginal and develops only after puberty. When the boy gets to the genital phase, he completes his development. He has to move from the autoerotic attitude, where subjective pleasure is sought, to a heteroerotic attitude that will link pleasure to an object, usually a woman. This passage will occur at puberty through a narcissistic phase, but that male organ will remain, as in infancy, the favored erotic organ. Woman, also passing through a narcissistic phase, must make man the object of her libido, but the process will be far more complex as she must pass from clitoral to vaginal pleasure. There is but one genital step for man, while there are two for woman. She runs a greater risk of not completing her sexual development, and of remaining at the infantile stage, and consequently of developing neuroses. At the autoerotic stage, the child is already more or less strongly attached to an object. A boy is fixated on his mother and wants to identify with his father. He's afraid of this ambition and fears that his father will punish him for it by mutilating him. The castration complex emanates from the Oedipus complex. So he develops aggressive feelings toward his father, while at the same time interiorizing his father's authority. Thus develops the superego that censures incestuous tendencies. These tendencies are repressed, the complex is liquidated, and the son is freed from the father, whom he in fact has installed in himself in the form of moral precepts. The more defined and strongly fought the Oedipus complex is, the stronger the superego. Freud first described the history of the girl in a completely symmetrical way. Later, he named the feminine form of the infant complex the Electra complex. But clearly he defined it less in itself than based on a masculine model. Yet he accepts a very important difference between the two. The little girl first has a maternal fixation, while the boy is at no time sexually attracted by the father. This fixation is a carryover from the oral phase. The infant then identifies with the father. But around the age of 5, she discovers the anatomical difference between the sexes, and she reacts to the absence of a male organ by a castration complex. She imagines having been mutilated and suffers from it. She must therefore renounce her virile pretensions. She identifies with her mother and tries to seduce her father. The castration complex and the Electra complex reinforce each other. The feeling of frustration for girls is all the more painful as, loving her father, the girl would like to resemble him, and inversely regret strengthens her love. Through the tenderness she inspires in her father, she can compensate for her inferiority. The girl experiences feelings of rivalry and hostility toward her mother. Then her superego constituted as well, repressing her incestuous tendencies. But her superego is more fragile. The Electra complex is less clear than the Oedipus complex, because her first fixation was maternal, and since the father was himself the object of this love that he condemned, his prohibitions had less force than in the case of the rival son. It can be seen that, as with her genital development, the little girl's overall sexual drama is more complex than her brother's. She might be tempted to react to the castration complex by rejecting her femininity, obstinately coveting a male organ, and identifying with her father. This attitude will lead her to remain at the clitoral stage, to become frigid, or to turn to homosexuality.
The water nymph Philyra was one of the 3,000 Oceanids born to Oceanus and Tethys. Cronus was cheating with Philyra when his wife Rhea came along. In order not to be caught by his wife, Cronus transformed himself into a stallion, escaped and mated with Philyra, hence their offspring, Chiron, the upper body of a human and the lower body and legs of a horse, who was called the wisest and justest of all the centaurs in Greek mythology. Cronus and his sister Rhea married and gave birth to the 6 of the 12 Olympians, the principal deities of the Greek pantheon. They were called Olympians. According to tradition, they resided on Mount Olympus, Hestia, similar to kitchen god or stove god in Han Chinese mythology. She is the patron saint of hearths and homes. In order to reject the love of her brother Poseidon and nephew Apollo, she swore before Zeus to remain a virgin forever. Demeter, the goddess of grain who is responsible for agriculture, grains, and maternal love. She had offspring with Zeus, Poseidon, Helios, and many other gods. Hades, the king of hell, who ruled the underworld. He had a crush on Demeter and Zeus' daughter, his niece Persephone, with Zeus' consent, while Persephone was picking flowers in a field with the Oceanids. Artemis, and Triton's daughter Pallas. Hades suddenly burst out of a crack in the earth and kidnapped her. Demeter searches around for her missing daughter until Helios tells her the truth. Demeter had neglected her duties as goddess of agriculture. The earth was in famine. Zeus was forced to order Hades to return Persephone to her mother. Hades obliged Zeus, but he tricked Persephone by giving her some pomegranate seeds to eat. And because she had tasted the food of the underworld, she was forced to spend 1/3 of each year, the winter, in the underworld, and the rest of the year with the gods of the upper world. This is the reason for the cycle of the seasons. Only when Persephone is around does Demeter have the presence of mind to care about making the plants grow. Persephone returns in the spring of each year, and is therefore also known as the goddess of spring and nature. Poseidon ruled over the sea, storms, earthquakes, and horses. Poseidon falls in love with his sister, Demeter, and begins to frantically pursue Demeter, who has suffered the loss of her daughter. On Demeter's journey in search of her daughter Persephone, she came to Phelpusa, where the Latin descended to the sanctuary of Demeter Uranus. To escape Poseidon's advances, Demeter took the form of a mare. Poseidon took the form of a stallion and mated with her. And Demeter gave birth to a daughter whose name was not allowed to be divulged lest it be contaminated. This daughter was sometimes called Despoina, which means the mistress and is cognate with despot. And Demeter also gave birth to Arion, a swift black-maned horse with great speed. Hera is the goddess of marriage, women and family, and the protector of women during childbirth. She was the sister and third legitimate wife of Zeus, because their mother rejected their marriage. When Hera traveled alone to Mount Fornax, Zeus created a terrible storm and came in the guise of a cuckoo and sat on Hera's lap to woo Hera. Hera covered it with her cloak, Zeus changed back to mate with Hera and swore to take her as his wife. Zeus, god of the sky and thunder, king of the Olympian gods. Zeus, the youngest son of Cronus, with the help of his mother, Rhea, challenged his father to a 10-year war between the Titan gods and the Olympian gods for supremacy, Titanomachy, which Zeus eventually won. Zeus imprisoned the defeated Titans in the underworld prison of Tartarus. To prevent them from escaping, Zeus ordered Hades to build bronze doors, windows, and walls around the prison, and ordered the Hecatompyres to guard it. In various faiths, it is claimed that believing in the wrong god is punishable by hell. But how can human beings with limited rationality distinguish between gods, demons, fairies, ghosts, and monsters? Even if we face angels, how can we tell the difference between a true angel who conveys God's will or a fallen angel who pretends to convey God's will? Follow me, subscribe to my channel, and we'll explore the world of gods and demons together in ideas and myths by our no will.